Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Taylor Watson of What's Investing, and today we're looking back on my goals that I set out back at the start of 2021, looking over how they went through 2021, and then giving you my goals for 2022 moving forward. So essentially, at the start of 2021, I set the goal to invest up to $13,000 of my own money in principal, and that was just based on how much I expected to be able to earn while at uni and while just experiencing university life. And by the end of 2021, we have invested over $15,000, so we definitely surpassed that goal. And we're super stoked about that because the earlier we increase our principal, the better in the long run, just based on compounding and inflation and everything of the sorts. And then another goal we had set out was $222 of dividends, growing all the way from $123 in dividends in 2020. So this initially looked attainable, but over the year I invested more into Tesla and lower dividend companies like Apple, Microsoft, and even Disney with no dividend. So we kind of went away from our goal in a way in pursuant of other goals that we came up with during the year. So we didn't quite reach this goal. If we actually got taxed properly, like our 10.5% that I should be taxed at rather than like the 30% that I generally get taxed at on dividends and then they get paid back later at the end of the financial year, we would have definitely hit it. But aside from that, we didn't quite reach it in actual dividends received. We were super duper close, pretty much just the month of January off. But I'm still super stoked that we got over $200 of dividends because my initial goal when I was setting it back in 2021 was just $200 because I didn't expect to kind of almost double in dividends because that would just be insane if we did that for a few years running. I kind of needed to set a base rate at what I think it'll grow at each year, and so 214 is just super happy with, and yeah, I hope to get similar growth for this year as well. And then another goal we set out, which is a 10% gain. The year before, it was just to stay positive, which I think we did. And then we set it a bit higher than the average, and we've hit a 41% gain since we started investing. So I don't actually really know how to calculate the year by year. It just gets a bit complicated with like previous investments and current investments and stuff, because if I invested $10,000 at the end of the year, my gain would drop heavily compared to money invested. So it's just going to be a pretty basic number for now, and moving forward we probably won't have a goal attached to the gain because it doesn't actually matter in the short term. But either way, we achieved it in sorts as we grew our gain 17% basis points, but grew it from 24% to 41%. And those are our financial goals sorted for 2021. We achieved all three of them in ways. The dividends were just off, but I think I'm super happy with what it was, and not all goals have to be attained; they just have to be striven for, and that's what we did. So I'm pretty happy with that performance. Personal goals, we had kind of all three podium stands. I guess we've got a fail, and then a kind of, and then a complete. So working off my loan to the parents during 2021. Didn't really work as much as I thought I would. I thought the COVID situation would sort itself out a bit more, so my general security work based on like events, sports and music festivals didn't obviously happen as much as I thought it would, so I wasn't able to attain as much income as expected. Also just during university, one of my semesters got quite hard, so I had to put a lot of extra time compared to what was expected to kind of achieve those papers, so I didn't actually work off really any of the loan to my parents, which is a complete fail to the goal that I set out, and was just a quite humbling experience on to the goal that I set out to do, and kind of what I can expect to do in the future. And then in terms of figuring out my career path, since I just recently graduated, I started looking at graduation work, internships, kind of careers based on my degree, and came across this epiphany after applying for kind of the first one. Had an interview, it went pretty well, and then I just had this epiphany that I didn't really want to go into the office. Say if I got the job the next week, I didn't really want to just be in an office full time, And then through a bunch of just random thinking, I was on Trade Me looking at renting in Queenstown and saw that it was reasonably affordable. And I don't know, a month or two later, here I am living in Queenstown now. So I guess I achieved the dream about where I want to go and how I'm going to get there. So me and Patricia, we kind of just dreamed about living in Queenstown for a bit and then actually just set out to do the hard yards, did a bunch of flat viewings, a bunch of job interviews, applying for jobs. Not as career-based as our degrees, but something that can pay the rent. And yeah, now we're living the dream in Queenstown, full-time working, and yeah, it's a bit different. So I guess we kind of achieved half of that goal, one that's bolded down there, the dream about where I want to go and how I'm going to get there, because we've just fully done that at the end of the year. And then finished my degree, yeah, absolutely smashed it. Super happy with the performance during out, not that the grades really matter at any point, but I'm kind of happy with how my grades went during the time, since it included a lot of drinking, social events, and just a lot of different like variety in papers, like lots of different stats, essay writing or calculus, and just a kind of full round just variety of stuff. So I'm just super happy to get that finished with. And last year I was getting pretty over it, to be honest. That final semester out of the 6 semesters was just it was a pain, but got through it, and kind of reaping the rewards now that I have just a more of a clear head, kind of happy with what I've achieved, and happy with how it went and why I did it. And yeah, so those are the 2021 goals, pretty much what I achieved, didn't achieve, and what I set out to achieve, and that's how it all went. And now we're going to look at the goals for 2022, which are going to be a little bit different, just based on the fact that I'm not at university anymore, so the kind of basis of my finances and my personal life have changed a lot. So for 2022, I'd like to invest my principal to $21,000. It's currently sitting at that number that you saw before, about $15,300. So it would be increasing my principal by about 40%. And I did want to aim higher initially, but lots of my paycheck does get cut. So by taxes, it'll be the first, 10 to 20%, depending on the bracket. It'll just average out to a certain number. And then I've got KiwiSaver at 3%, and then I've got student loan, and I'm not actually certain what the percentage is. It's based on income, and kind of has its own threshold as well. But I already have 3 deductions just like that, and then I have a loan to my parents, which I would like to pay back week by week, so that is another deduction. So I have a lot of deductions on my income. So I think increasing by 6,000-ish to 21,000, to increase it to 21,000 at the age of 21 is kind of just a nice goal to hit for me. And since I'm in Queenstown, I'll also be spending a generous proportion of my disposable income to adventuring in Queenstown, whether it be hiring a mountain bike, going snowboarding, learning how to wakeboard, trying out a bunch of famous restaurants, or just absolutely slacking off and not doing much. Investing into 21,000 would make me happy, and it's something which I believe is quite a high goal based on the information here. Yeah. And then for dividends, I'd like to earn a cheeky $333 in dividends, similar to the $222 we set out the year before. But this one, I think we'll be able to focus a bit more on, as Tesla has kind of soared in price since that last goal setting round, and we will generally be spending less of our principal investment investing more into Tesla, as it will be more of a hold for us into the future, unless some more information comes present that makes me more inclined to buy. And we've invested into a high yield monthly dividend company, which is increasing our dividends month by month, which is another reason why I'm aiming quite high for this dividend goal. I'd like to set the dividend ones really high but still achieve them. And so this year we're kind of aiming into the middle. Since we're increasing our investment by 40%, we would kind of expect our dividends to increase by 40%. In general terms, of course, we're buying the same stocks at generally higher prices, so the dividend yield will be lower unless the dividend yield has raised in the past. So it gets a bit wishy-washy, but in general, we're trying to increase our dividends received from 214 to 333, which is a 55% increase, and we're only increasing our initial investment by 40%. The goals don't line up fully, but I'm hoping that lots of dividend raises come into account. Maybe some special dividends. Also, just sometimes a stock might absolutely plummet in price, and it's either one we already hold or plan to hold. So we invest at a very low cost basis and get a very high yield, which would change the proportion of investment principal to dividend. And essentially, I just like to aim for funny numbers that make my brain and OCD giggle. So 333 is kind of the same as 222. It's where it comes from. And I don't know, I feel like it's attainable. Same as last year, we were super close, and I think we'll get super close this year. I've just got to make sure I'm focusing on those dividend growth companies unless I do see a great opportunity like Tesla. If Tesla is still a super great opportunity and I decide that to be so, or another company comes around, this dividend goal will definitely be missed, but it'll be all for good reason, hopefully. And then the last goal for 2022 is one that's hard to measure according to like SMART goals and stuff, because it has no definite kind of boundary. But I've noticed over the past 2 years that when a company that I own dips kind of more than 5%, or a company goes up a little bit too much, like, I don't know, 10% or more, or say I don't look at the portfolio for a month and kind of Mainfreight's gone up 40%, I generally get naturally fearful to increase my position into it, as it's far more expensive than my cost basis, and I don't really know if the fundamentals have changed that much, because lots of the fundamentals that I kind of initially invest off, I don't record them, so it's hard to know the difference in my initial timing. And then if it goes down heaps, generally the market's bearish on the stock, and sometimes it just takes a bit of effect on whether I buy it or not. So I do sometimes buy average up or average down on some of these companies. I just decide that in the past, I've decided to buy this company. It shouldn't matter what the market's doing. I'm going to buy into this company, dollar cost average in. But there's a lot of the times where I just go, this one hasn't gone up as much, so I should buy into this one. And it's just a bit of a mental game that I have to play with myself. So recently, I think Disney for me is down 10%, and I hadn't been buying it for a month or two. So just yesterday, I was just like, no, I got to stop that. I believe in Disney. I think they're going to be very profitable in the future based on their streaming, and when I guess the world gets a handle on the pandemic. So I just invested into Disney at a lower cost basis because it's down 10%, and just went, I'm happy with that. I need to be more happy with that in the future. And that's kind of a financial goal I'd like to achieve. It's just something I can weigh up, I guess, subconsciously. At the end of the year, I can kind of just go, did I do this more or less? And I can actually decide if I've done that, and even look into my investing history to actually kind of prove it. Some 2022 personal goals. These ones are kind of, I guess, hard to think of. Like when I was going through this, I was kind of going, I've finished university, I'm going into my first experience of full-time work, I've moved towns, there's a lot happening, and generally, since I'm not going into jobs that use my career, use my degree, I'm kind of just having a break, in a way, a mental break, going into Queenstown to do some adventurous stuff, and just working full-time to cover the bills. Just generally, I don't know, just having a break. So the personal goal is kind of a little blander than usual, but they're still goals nevertheless. So in 2021, of course, I've already talked about this, I didn't work as much as I expected due to my own laziness, university pressure, and COVID-19 just kind of cutting into the casual work that I was doing. So I wasn't really able to, and didn't really put much into paying back my parents, and I'd like to focus more towards this in 2022. And I don't have the goal of completely finishing paying them back by the end of this year. I think I can do it by the end of next year. But I've already started paying them back week by week already this year, and I'd like to continue that as long as I'm working full-time, just every week sending them a bit to slowly pay it back. Since it's a personal loan from family, currently there's no interest on it, and so there's no incentive to pay it back apart from my own moral judgment, based on what I feel is necessary and what I think they would feel is necessary, and it's kind of trying to find that balance, because financially it makes no sense to pay it back if it's got no interest, kind of like the student loan, but it's just based on morals more than financial numbers. And in terms of paying back my student loan, I'm just going to let it automate it, and if it gets to a point where I think it's too high, I'll look into seeing if it can automate it lower, because obviously I wouldn't want to pay it back as fast as I can because it's interest free. So paying back as slow as possible without it negatively affecting me would be the optimal. But yeah, other than that, I'd love to experience Queenstown. So using my spare income after expenses to experience Queenstown, what they have to offer, their restaurants, and all those adventurous experiences I'd like to experience. It's a lot of saying experience. But yeah, I'd like to focus more on investing in my present experiences, making new friends, just enjoying new things, and focusing more on that than investing into my future, just for this year possibly, and just generally have a bit more of a break from focusing too much on the nitty gritty. And 2022, I'd like to kind of find the job, and I kind of bolded the in terms of I'd like to find a job which I'm happy to work for the foreseeable future, so just full time, enjoying it, loving it, not worried about the pay, as long as it's good enough to cover the bills and, cover that leisure and investing in stuff. If it allows for me to be motivated, grow into the future, whether that be based on the wage, the salary, or just more responsibilities in a higher position. Something that supports my goals, whether that be the finances, the flexibility, the team, or something that motivates me to start my own path. So if I'm working somewhere and then I suddenly just click and want to start my own thing, just being able to find that kind of opportunity this year would be awesome. It's one that's hard to measure because it might lay under the radar for a bit, but I think it would be cool to achieve that. And I might not know. Like, say if I start working a different job than I currently am in 8 months, and I don't know, suddenly I'm working there still in 3 years, then this goal is kind of ticked off if it's something that I stay in for a long period of time, as it kind of fits into those parameters. But that's been the rundown of my goals. The financial ones are a bit more specific and more recordable to achieve. But these ones I believe I can kind of self-manage and self-report back if I've actually achieved them or not. So that's me. That's my goals for 2022 and basically the overview of how 2021 went. If you want to let me know what your goals are into the future, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And yeah, I'd love to read them and kind of just hear about you and your story, and I guess be able to compare it to my story in a way. Yeah, so that's me. Happy investing, guys, and I'll catch you later.